And I did type in that request in the chat box. Please add your name, title, organization, email for our records. Especially if you have a question and we need to get back to you, then we'll know how to contact you. Thank you for joining the Johnson O'Malley Modernization Act Consultation webinar. This consultation webinar will be 2 hours in length from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time. We have a brief agenda before we get into the content. First, I would like to welcome the BIE and BIA federal employees and contractors who are assisting with this presentation. Could you please identify yourselves? Let's start with Veronica.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Veronica Lane, and I'm an education research analyst that works in the Albuquerque BIE offices, and I primarily work with Bureau-operated schools.
Thank you. Angela? Angela Barnett, could you introduce yourself? It looks like you might be there. You were muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is Angela Barnett, Program Specialist for JOM, Oklahoma Area Education Office in Oklahoma City.
Thank you. Regina, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Gina Gilbert. I work with the Office of Regulatory Affairs and Collaborative Action, and I am assisting Bureau of Indian Education with this project on JOM.
Thank you. Liz, are you on the line?
Excuse me.
Brian, are you on the line?
Hello?
Is Brian Quint on the line?
So no, this is actually Brenda Rio. I'm signing in from the Office of the Solicitor.
Thank you, Brenda.
Yep.
I saw a Brian and they were muted. And is there anyone else working on the Johnson O'Malley consultation from BIE or BIA on the line? Anyone from the central office? Okay, thank you. We'll get started. Again, if you just logged in, please type in your name, title, organization, and email for our records. Some brief instructions. We are going to mute the microphones. I'm going to do that now.
Excuse me.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't see my microphone. All right. If you could please mute your phones as well in case I couldn't capture everyone on the mute in case of background noise or typing. And if you could hold your verbal comments until we get to slides where we are asking for your comments, we'd appreciate that. And if you have a comment early on or a question, if you could type that in the chat box, that would be helpful for us as we go along. We will go through a PowerPoint presentation. There are 2 topics. So about halfway through the call, around 2 o'clock Mountain, maybe a little after 2:10, we will transition, if we haven't already, into topic 2. So we'll have time to cover both topics. Also, for more information, you can go to the BIE JOM webpage, which is listed on the agenda. There are some updated documents there. And it also has information on upcoming rulemaking sessions. We'll start with a little background on Johnson O'Malley. I'm sure all of you know about the background, but I'll just highlight a few points. As you know, the Modernization Act was signed at the end of the year last year, December 31st, 2018. It continues the authorization of contracts for eligible Indian students, for services for eligible Indian students. It also describes the JOM program and operates under individual education plan. The plans, the school plans, are just designed to address the educational needs of eligible American Indian and Alaska Native students. These grants are used to meet their unique and specialized needs. And what the Modernization Act requires, it requires the BIE to update the current count of eligible Indian students. It also requires the Bureau to conduct consultation on the most applicable and accurate data, looking at multiple data sources such as Census, Department of Ed, National Center on Education Statistics, and BIE contractor data. The Act also requires consultation on the interest in expanding the Johnson O'Malley program. There will also be a preliminary report that is published. The aim is to have that published at the end of the month, and that report will contain information on the data sources that we will talk about today, the most applicable and accurate data sources based on your feedback. The new Act also requires rulemaking, and the rulemaking will cover a different topic. It will cover the definition of eligible Indian student. It will also cover how the funding formula may be clarified and revised, and also any changes to At the end of the year, a final report will be published that will include many of the things that we will ask for and discuss throughout the year, including a final count of the eligible Indian students, a summary of the data sources, funding levels, etc. Our two topics today are going to be, first, the feedback on the most applicable and accurate data for the student count. The second topic is to determine the interest in initiating or expanding JOM programs. Topic 1, we are going to review 3 data sources, and this is outlined in the Modernization Act, to look at the U.S. Census Bureau, look at data from U.S. Department of Education, which also contains National Center on Education Statistics, and then data from current contractors. And before I hand it over to Veronica, I just wanted to remind folks, I tried to mute, but if you don't call in and type in a number, I may not be able to mute your line. So if you could mute it on your end, I would appreciate that. To talk about the data sources, we're going to have Ms. Veronica Lane review a few slides. Veronica?
Good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you, Maureen, for the introduction. And just for those who have joined the call, I will be taking us through the data that we've pulled from the U.S. Census Bureau, the National Center on Educational Statistics, and all of this data was available publicly online. And for the U.S. Census Bureau data, we contacted the U.S. Census Bureau and worked with one of their staffers to, they helped us identify the most relevant tables for American Indian and Alaska Native students. So I'm just going to give a little bit of background. A lot of the data that we're going to be presenting from the Census Bureau comes from the American Community Survey. And this survey, they do it every year. And the Census Bureau has a population estimates program, and they take survey responses from the American Community Survey and use statistical methods to provide single-year estimates and then multi-year estimates, and they provide all of those online. So some of the estimates that we'll be going over today are just from 1 year, so that would be from 1 year of surveys that they've collected, and some of the estimates we're going over will be a multi-year estimate. And so I'll kind of explain the difference between those two as we go along. So the current slide right now is using information that was collected from the 2017 American Community Survey. And so this table, we pulled this information from the American Fact Finder online tool, which the Census Bureau uses. And the estimate, you can see here the table, this table provided estimates and associated margins of error for the number of students who were American Indian and Alaska Native who were enrolled from preschool to grade 12, and they provided an estimate for each state in the United States. And so what we did is we aggregated the numbers that were provided in this table to produce the estimate that's here on the screen, which was 581,241. So as a 1 year estimate for data collected January 2017 to December 2017, that's the aggregated number that we arrived at. and I'll show you kind of the difference between this one-year estimate and the multi-year estimate. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so this table shows data from a separate type of estimate. So these numbers come from a 5-year estimate, so that includes data for 5 years or 60 months, and that would be from the years 2013 to 2017. And so this table that we pulled, it provided estimates and margins of error for the number of students that were enrolled in grades pre-K to grade 12. And so for this table, pre-K included nursery school and preschool. So we have the note about geography because the American Community Survey and the Census Bureau is a geography-based survey. So it's important to think about that when we're referring to U.S. Census Bureau data. So again, so this is a 5-year estimate, and the estimate that we aggregated and came to for using the information from this table was 600,217 students. Okay, next slide. So the U.S. Department of Education, they have the National Center on Educational Statistics, or NCES, and they use data they call Common Core of data. And so all of the data that they use, we pulled from their public elementary, secondary school universe survey. And so this is based off of each school year. So the school year that numbers for this table include school year 2016 to to 2017, sorry. So the information that came as part of this table is the number of students, and they provided kind of the definition, the number of students having origins in any of the original peoples of North America and who maintain cultural identification through tribal affiliation or community recognition as reported by each school. So NCES, this is actual reported data for every public school across the country, and they upload that into a database that is hosted by NCES, and that database is called ELSI, and that stands for Elementary Secondary Information System. So we pulled the most recent data that was available in ELSI, and the data includes numbers of enrolled students, grades preschool to grade 12. So what's important about this is these are actual reported numbers from public schools across the country, and it's up to the school to determine or to define what they consider to be American Indian or Alaska Native. So that's kind of up to the school, and that's the information that's included in the data system for NCES. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the next data set that we pulled from was again hosted by the National Center for Education Statistics, and they have an online tool called EDGE, and that stands for Education Demographic and Geographic Estimates. And so again, all of these tables that we pulled are available online, and this resource combines information from the American Community Survey, and so the Census and Department of Ed kind of work in tandem with these estimates. So the data included in this tool, again, this is based off of a 5-year estimate from 2012 to 2016, and the estimate included here is 570,825 students. So this is American Indian and Alaska Native children enrolled in school. So that's the data that we pulled from publicly available information. If there are any questions, or I can't say that I'm a super expert in the American Community Survey through the census, but they have a wealth of information online. They have papers that talk about their sampling methods, their response rates, and things of that sort. But if there are any questions about what's provided here, I can answer those.
We have one more data set, the current grantees, and then we have a summary slide. So could we please hold off until the summary slide, and then we can talk about all of the data sources. Angela, could you please go over the current contractor data, the numbers from the previous student counts, and then this effort to collect counts?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Maureen? Okay. Okay. This slide right here talks about the 1995 count, and everybody is familiar with that because that's what we have been using since 1995, and that count is 271,884, and that has been frozen since 1995. So any funding amount that you receive is based off of this count. Now, the next count was in 2014, and that count was based off of surveys that were sent out and received, and that gave them a little bit more time to send those out and get those back. And so that's why the number there has increased versus the 2019, which that 2019 count was collected since, I want to say April 24th is when those were sent out. And the deadline date to get those back was May 20th. However, we are still collecting those. And as you notice, there's only 146,000 counts that have been received. And so I see names that have been logged on to listen to this on this webinar. And I noticed that some of the counts that you are representing on the call today, I have not received. And so if I've gone through most of them, the emails, there's maybe 10 emails that I haven't opened yet that pertain to the count. However, if you have not received a response from me saying that this is your official email stating that I have received your count, then you need to email me and or resend your count if you haven't heard back from me. But 146,000, that is, like I said, less than the previous two. However, with those counts still coming in, I really expect that that will definitely increase.
I would just add, for this webinar and for the preliminary report, we needed to gather student count information immediately, but right now it's being used for research and for the preliminary count. We will continue to accept counts throughout the year for the final report at the end of the year. There is a form on the BIE JOM website, so if you're not sure what format to send your count to, or what format to use to send us your count, if you could please go to the BIE JOM webpage and scroll down. There is a form, I believe it says 2019 student count form. You can use that, and Angela's information is available as well. And let's turn it back to Veronica. If you could just summarize the information, and then we will have a discussion with the audience on the data sources.
Sure. Okay. So this this summary table includes all of the information that we've collected from the 3 different data sources. And so you can see the source is on the most left column. The year is the middle column. And I do want to point out that, again, what I was talking about earlier, but there is a difference between the single year and multi-year estimates. And so we've identified like the 5-year estimates, which is in the first and the third row. And then the single year estimate is the second row. So you can look at the estimates. So starting from the U.S. Census Bureau, the top row, the 5-year estimate for that is 600,217, which is the quote unquote largest estimate. And I would say that especially for the U.S. Census numbers, these are estimates, and so that doesn't mean that they're hard counts, and these don't come from reports. They are estimates using statistical methods based off of the American Community Survey responses. And so if you look, there is variability between the different data sources, and I would say that the NCES 2016-2017 school year information, that is really building off of reports that schools are making to the Department of Education. So that's just key to look at there. And then you can see the numbers, the respective numbers for the years that the BIE collected information and counts. So if there are any questions right now about the data sources, I'd be happy to answer any of those right now.
I believe you are unmuted. You are not muted.
And I believe that there also is a website or email address that'll be provided at the end of the presentation. So if there are any questions that you have about the data sources, you can also submit those via email.
Yes, that's correct. There will be a comments email provided, and we have a couple of questions here that might help us with our discussion. These are some questions to think about. What are the advantages and disadvantages of using either source, whether it's census, ed, or the BIE contractor data? Perhaps there might be a combination of data sources that you heard that might be more, that might accurately portray the JOM student count and or potentially eligible students. And then if there were no data sources that were shown, do you have other data sources in mind that we might consider for more applicable and accurate data? Just a few questions to think about, and let's give a little wait time for folks if you have questions or comments. And any other federal employees, if you have some comments, please chime in.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, could you please state your name?
This is Avis Ballard with the Osage Nation.
Yes.
We received a really short amount of time about sending in our student count, and because of that, I wasn't able to collect the information from our Head Start schools, which includes 3- and 4-year-old eligible students. Can I resubmit our count and get that information to you?
Angela, you want to take that?
Hi, Avis. Yes, you can. Whenever you do, be sure that, because what I will do is whenever I get your count, if you send a preliminary one in with what you have right now, I will respond back to you so that way you know that I received that. And when you update that, just do it as soon as you can so that way we have that on file or logged. And when you do send in your other count, be sure that I respond back to that so that way, and I'll let you know that I updated your count.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You know, I realize that this is, and I agree with you, this was kind of, some people receive their form a day, 2 days, day after it was due. And that's because of the resources that was used to get the information out, because I didn't have all of everybody's email addresses or contact information to be able to get these sent out to each and every one of you. And so I relied on other resources to get that information out. And so I am working with you to get this done. However, hopefully in the future, we will be able to, we will know, and we'll know when all this is due and things like that. So that way we'll know that, you know, it's coming. So I will work with you.
Hello.
You could mute your phone, please. Did you have a question, sir?
Yes, this is Steve Pruitt with the National Johnson O'Malley Association. And my question really goes back to the data sets that you presented in today's presentation. And I had a couple questions there. Is there a process that you follow to get to those particular data sets? And I'm wondering what that process looked like.
Yes, and thank you for the question. This is Veronica. I worked with Maureen, and we contacted for the U.S. Census Bureau information. We contacted a representative from them and told them about what we were trying to do with getting the best data for these estimates, and they helped point us to the data tables. So all the U.S. Census Bureau data that we showed, those are pulled from tables from American Fact Finder, and so basically you just go into their website and you do a search, and they helped us identify the parameters to come up with the data tables. So you can go in and you can search by different geographies, by different population characteristics. And so we're looking at demographics that would pull information for all American Indian and Alaska Natives. So I think it's important. We've had a lot of conversations about like U.S. Census Bureau data and Department of Ed data, and all of the information for the Census Bureau is self-reported data. So there isn't they send out surveys to households, and the respondents indicate, what their race and ethnicity is, and there isn't anyone who goes in and double checks that. So really anyone can can mark that they're American Indian or Alaska Native through that. So that's self-reported data that comes back from the surveys. If there's an interest or if there's interest, we can kind of show you how you can pull the same tables. We kept records of all the table numbers and the parameters that were used to develop those or to pull that information from their online tools.
Okay, and it's my next question really does relate to the parameters that you used, and in the interest of full disclosure, in my not too distant past, I was a congressional staff director of the Census and Population Committee, so I probably have a pretty good working understanding of these various data sets that the census can provide you. And given that the Act says that this preliminary report is a projection of potential students as well, how do you propose to get there using essentially enrollment, A, and B, given the census data set that you picked, you represented it as ages preschool, pre-K to 12. How does that match up with what has been the working definition of an eligible student since 1986, which is a little bit outside of that parameter? I'm just wondering how you either accommodated that or how you propose to accommodate it.
Maureen, do you want to take that question?
Sure. So as Veronica said, there were a lot of different tables within these sources, and to not overwhelm and to not have too many tables to present, we had to look at what we thought was the closest matching, because a lot of the tables might have had tribal membership or just self-reported Native American, Alaska Native data. Some may or may not have had ages, and some may or may not have had grade levels. So we tried to look for the ones that were the closest in match to who the eligible students currently are. And I would ask my colleagues as well if they want to add more to that. And as one of our questions, the last questions, it says, are there other data sources that might provide more applicable and accurate data? So we welcome you to send us any other data sources with tables that you consider more applicable and accurate, and we can look at that and incorporate that into the preliminary report.
That's good. Last question. The last maybe 2-3 years, we've been on the merry-go-round about this self-identification, self-reporting exercise. And I'm wondering, when you looked at these numbers, how much weight was given from the OMB Circular 15 in assessing, again, which data set you're presenting today? And if you're not familiar, the OMB Circular 15 lays out the ground rules for determining which census numbers can be used by programs that are self-reported for every category. So it's not just a question of it being applicable here and nowhere else, but it lays that out. It also provides for instances where we have situations where people are eligible for JOM, not necessarily enrolled in a tribal organization, but can prove their heritage and have the CBID cards that help them qualify for JOM, that again, using only the one category only, which I believe is what your chart reflects, misses all those people. And that's one of the main concerns we have been advocating for, is not to miss any kids. So back to my question, I mean, is Circular 15 weighing in at all on this information you're presenting?
We did not weigh in on that.
Okay.
But we welcome any data sources or tables that anyone out there has that may be more inclusive to send to us. Any other comments, suggestions?
Maureen?
Yes.
Good afternoon. This is Roxanne Mills Brown with the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe. I guess I am wondering how tribal membership databases work with this. And it would seem to me that we have found 5 counties that we count as our CHISDAs that are related to our tribal health care program. And so we have students within those 5 counties, and we can work within our CRM database to filter all that information and determine our 3-year-olds through 12th grade students. Is that not a data source that would be considered across the country, that type of tribal database, or?
Yes, Roxanne, I think that would be a relevant data source, a tribal membership data source, and I can work with my colleagues to find out more about how to access that information. What we presented today was based on what the Modernization Act asked us to present. Now, of course, you know, that's the minimum requirement. But like we said, if there's other data sources, we welcome that suggestion, and we'll definitely take a look at tribal membership databases.
Okay. Now, is it appropriate for us to submit as a new tribe, possibly seeking JOM, the JOM program and funding, to submit that information from our database?
You can, so we are interested in finding out not only the current eligible, but potentially eligible. So even though you're not a current, you don't have the current contracts for your students, we would like to have that information so we can add that for the potentially eligible number. And that doesn't guarantee more funding or more contracts, but that will, you know, help us with our final report to show what we're not presently capturing.
Okay.
Or who isn't presently receiving services.
Okay.
Regina, did you have a comment you wanted to share?
No, it was something that you had already stated, that the JOM Modernization Act listed the 3 sources of data to initially determine the student count. So that is what the Bureau provided.
Okay. Making sure I didn't miss anything.
Okay, Katabatash.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
Could we take the average number from those data sources and use that for the count?
I think we're exploring all possibilities, and I think that's a very interesting solution that we hadn't really thought of. Now, one of our questions is, might there be a combination of data sources that most accurately portrays the count? So, I mean, I think that we could see what an average was and include that as a possible data source. And I'll defer to Brenda to give her comments. Brenda, do you have any thoughts on that? An average?
No, I think I would just reiterate what you said, that it's an interesting, I think it's something that we have to explore.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Jeremy Arnett from the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, and I wanted to ask a little bit of a clarifying question, since we're talking about tribally developed data sources through enrollment data. You know, the census is sort of widely understood to undercount Native people, and that has resulted for other programs in some self-certification efforts through tribal census, reservation censuses. Am I hearing that potentially tribes could offer their own data sources, or for their particular population, or for the schools in their service area, and that could be used in combination with the national data sources?
That's a good question, and let me back up, and I'll also ask my colleagues to help me better explain. This consultation on data sources will be part of, first of all, will be part of a preliminary report that discusses the various data sources out there and advantages and disadvantages of all of them. The first year, what we're doing right now is we're researching the possibility of a data source for a baseline count. And then subsequent years, we would get the information directly from the contractors for a student count. So this first year of the Modernization Act implementation, we're really exploring data sources for a baseline count, knowing that in the past we may not have captured all of the eligible or all the potentially eligible students. And then once that is determined, then the subsequent student counts will be the data from the actual contractors. And I'm going to ask my colleagues to chime in and clarify if I misspoke.
This is Veronica, and thank you so much for that comment, Jeremy. And I think it's valuable. It's so valuable to have these comments back, because that's the type of feedback that we're soliciting and asking for. Because as Maureen mentioned, we're doing what was written in the law, that we have to include those 3 data sources. And so the more comments that we hear and receive from our tribes and members of our communities that you know, that there are issues. We obviously know the issues with the census. I mean, the census data, just as an example, it's really based off of geographies. And so from what I understand, for instance, me and my family, we live in Albuquerque and we're members of the Navajo Nation. And so our students might not necessarily be, or our kids might not necessarily be included in accounts, you know, for the Navajo Nation, because we're not really located on Navajo land. And so there are just a lot of issues with, I think, each of these data types. And so the more comments we get back asking about these alternatives and ways that we can, you know, work with tribes and communities to get more accurate counts, we welcome those comments. So yes, thank you for offering those comments back to us.
Accommodations of data. We do our own data.
Maureen, this is Regina. I was looking back on the Modernization Act, and there is something in there that talks about identifiable tribal enrollment information. So I think with the last comment that we had there, maybe we will take your comment and refer back to the Modernization Act and refer back to others involved with this process, and provide some feedback to the group here so that we won't have that question unanswered.
Thank you, Regina. Just a quick time check. We are about 5 minutes from the midway point, and we can continue on this topic for a little bit longer, but you're also welcome to send comments to the email that will be provided at the end of the webinar, and as well as you can add anything to the chat box, which is being recorded. And if you came in towards the middle after I asked you to type in your name and title, organization, and email, if you could do that in the chat box, that will be, we would appreciate that for our records. Any other comments regarding the data sources or the combination, or any that we have not provided?
Okay.
I think with that, we can move on to the next topic. The second topic is the interest in initiating or expanding JOM programs. And I'm going to hand this over to my colleague, Angela Barnett. And Angela, could you go over the slides talking about the various regions and types of contracts, and then also letting folks know that if we have an error or we left off someone, to please let you know. I'll turn it over to Angela.
Yes, what I did was I took I looked off of reports that I had received where funding was given to each of these regions, and that's how I came up with the numbers next to them. You look at the first one, it says Great Plains Agency, and it says 16. So that is telling you that there are at least 16 tribes or entities that are receiving JOM programs that come from that area, and then so on. Now, you may be looking at this just like Maureen just said, and you may look at Eastern region and think, oh, self-governance, only one. Well, you know, there may be several of them out there that we didn't capture when we were putting this information together. And just like it says that there's 334 contracts, but as I went through emails, and some of you who may be on the call right now may have received an email from me asking questions about your program or your allocation amount and how you receive your funding. And that's the reason why I was asking, so that way I knew how to record your count to either a region or to the agency or public schools or city, state. So that's the reason why for the questions. Sorry, I couldn't go into more explaining why I was asking that, but I was trying to get this collected and trying to as quickly as I could. But on that 334. However, whenever I go and look at the count that I currently have to date, there's actually 349 that I have received, and or that I know that there are out there. And so, like I said, if you look through there, you'll see where all the regions and their counts. And then, Maureen, if you go to the next slide. And then when you go to the next slide, those are telling you what tribes or organizations that are receiving the funds in that area. You see where the Great Plains region, and there's 638. So that's telling me that all of these tribes within this Great Plains region are getting their funding, excuse me, through 638. And if you go to the next slide, the next slide says the same thing, and then so on. So whenever you review these slides and take a look at them, and if you see that your tribe is not on there, then be sure and let me know. I have added some since this has been posted, and so yours may come up you know, later on when we update this and get a more accurate picture out there. And so, but again, feel free to let me know. And then if you go to the next slide, and then again there, you know, it just talks about the Rocky Mountain region and who all's in the Rocky Mountain region. And then if you continue on to the Alaska region, there's several pages for the Alaska region. And so if you continue on, Maureen. And again, I really hope each and every one of you do look at this. And if take for instance, if you have, there's a tribe out there, I'm just going to throw a tribe out there. Let's take the Chickasaw Nation of Oklahoma. If you are listed in a 638, but you're actually Office of Self-Governance, then you would tell me that. However, you're going to see on some of these, if you continue on, you may have, if you go down, like Maureen, just go ahead and go through it. And then when you go down to like 477, they may have be a 477 tribe. However, they may be an OSG. So I may have OSG and 477 intertwined, because what I did was whenever I put this together, how the money was given to the tribes is where I put them at. So they may be an OSG tribe, but they went 477, but OSG was the one that allocated the money to the tribe, so I left them where the money was allocated at, even though they may be a 477 tribe. However, if you see that, please let me know, so that way I can update that as well, or I can put a notation next to it that it's a OSG tribe or a 477 tribe that's in one or the other. And then what I did was I did, as you notice, that there's 638 and there's 477, and then there's Office of Self-Governance, OSG. So how you see those is how they're getting their funding. And then as you continue on down to, let's go down to the public schools, down to slide 32. The same thing there. I got this public school information from the person that actually does the allocation for each of these public schools. And again, I know that there are some public schools that are out there that are not on here. Pretty much those that are on this one here, the one for Oklahoma and Kansas, those are in New Mexico, and those are pretty much, but I know that there's still some out there that may have some that goes commercial, or I just talked with somebody this morning that they're a public school and didn't realize that they even get JOM funds. So there's just so many different avenues that JOM funds can get out there, and that's one of the things that we're collecting, so that way we will have a more updated list to know who gets funding. And so that's what this was put together for our information and also for yours as well. And then we do have some state departments that in cities that receive JOM funding, and I'm sure that there's probably more out there. However, and the only way that I know if there's more out there, or we know that there's more out there, is if you send in account, or account is sent in, and I can't find you anywhere on this listing. Or let's take the Chickasaw Nation again. You know, one of their schools sends in a count. Then if Chickasaw Nation already sent in everybody's count with all the public schools' names, then I can go there and match that up to make sure that I'm not duplicating, or I'm not going back out and asking that particular public school, how do you get your funds? So it's been a process to put this together. I do have a more detailed listing that has all the subcontractors that all of the tribes have. So that way, if somebody emails me or calls me and wants to know, does this school receive funding, I can just go to it and find out if they do. If not, then I usually just refer them to the closest tribe around there to see if they actually have that school within their jurisdiction. Maureen, do you have anything that you want to add to this that I may have missed?
Just the slide, you touched on it, but you might talk about, for those that don't have a contract, briefly go over the types, the possible types. And
okay, yeah, she's got, okay. All right, she's got that up there on the screen right now. The various types include the Office of Self-Governance. And we have been in contact with the Office of Self-Governance and how they work with the tribes and how they put their contracts together and what they do and what they don't do, the oversights and things like that. So that's one way that some of the tribes gets their JOM funds. Another one is through 638, Office of Self-Determination. And what they are, those are usually located at the regions and at the agencies. And those are through a contract. that is administered through the BIA, and those are usually done by awarding officials. So they are the ones that administer those contracts on the self-determination side. The 477 workforce development, those are, we have one lady that does all of the awarding for the workforce development, and she's located out of Oklahoma City. Most of you know her, and she's Miss Mary Dupree. So she does those for the JOM contracts. And those are administered and handled by the workforce development specialists that are located all across the United States and Alaska. And then we have commercial. There are several commercial contracts that we have, and those are some of the public schools that go commercial, and we're still, the commercial side is the one that we're still getting more familiar with. And I'm sure there's probably other public schools out there that are going, that have a commercial contract, but I'm unaware of it until, and then we're reaching out to those, to the commercial contract side to see what other tribes or probably public schools I would assume are more the commercial. Now, if you're out there and you're a commercial contract, please let me know, because I'm unaware of who all really is commercial. And for those that do not have a contract and you would like to contract, well, what I normally do is, if you call and you ask me, and what I would do is I direct you to who your closest regional office is, because first of all, like Maureen had touched on earlier, that there has to be funding available before we can even take new participants, meaning new contractors. And at this right now, there's we don't have increase in funding. However, hopefully, we're hoping through this modernization and through all the collection that we're taking, that they see that there is a need to fund the JOM, so that way we can start including more participants. Maureen, do you have anything else or anybody else has anything that you want to add to that?
Well, thank you for the overview. Our JOM office, we are really establishing a lot of foundational work along with implementing the Modernization Act. And so we're really trying to get good, accurate information on all the contracts out there, the correct regions, etc. So thank you for the overview of all of the primary contractors. And like Angela said, if we missed someone, please let us know. If we missed a tribe or we put them under the wrong type of contract. We could go into the guiding questions. So this topic really, this last topic today is about determining and expanding or initiating new JOM programs. And we want to make sure we state that this does not automatically mean that if you don't, or if your tribe doesn't already have one, that you'll have one, or if you don't have one presently, that you'll have one by submitting a count or an application. This is really research. We're researching not only the data sources, but researching the interest in broadening the JOM program. So if you have any comments, we have a few questions here. Do you currently receive JOM funds through a contract? Are you hoping, if you're a tribe and you want to subcontract more, have more subcontractors, is that an interest? If you don't have a contract, and you're not a subcontractor or a contractor, are you interested in establishing a JOM program if funds become available? And just trying to provide an awareness to you that there are different mechanisms or different types of contracts out there, and they're not all alike. So that's more for your information. So we'll turn it over to you all. Do you have comments about this topic, initiating or expanding JOM programs?
Maureen, this is Angela. One of the things that I will say is that I did have one tribe that did reach out to me and ask, because they are a current contractor, and they asked about potential subcontractors if they would like to add to their JOM program at the tribe. And so what they did was they sent me a separate spreadsheet that talks about, that outlines or details, what school it is and how many students that they have there. Now, how they did that, I don't know if it's something that they've been trying to work with but just can't add them because of their funding level. But that's one of the things that they did. And what I have done is I have started a spreadsheet with potentials. So that way, if, when given the opportunity to submit that, at least I have that started because there is a need out there. And it's with both, not only current contractors, but also some that are interested in wanting to have a JOM program. They too as well have sent some in. I haven't received a whole lot, but anyone who has inquired, I have told them, yes, go ahead and send it in. However, keep in mind that, this doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a program, but at least we will have your count when, when we submit that, or when asked, who else is out there that wants to receive a JOM program and funding.
While you're thinking about it, just to let you know, I mentioned at the beginning that on the BIE JOM website, we just posted information on upcoming rulemaking. So those sessions are going to cover different topics than today. And those topics will be about the funding formula, about updates to the regulations. A draft proposed rule is on the website, and then the definition of eligible Indian student. So those will be for future rulemaking sessions. We'll have 2 webinars and we'll have 2 in-person sessions. But we'll give a little more wait time for you on this topic, initiating or expanding programs.
Maureen?
Yes.
This is Steve Pruitt again. Are you considering any kind of formal process to, in essence, recruit or solicit interest in new program and new program activity?
Could you give an example?
Well, an easy one would be a Federal Register notice of a solicitation, website, communication with the tribes themselves in terms of some kind of a notice. The other aspect here is also some of the contractors, I believe, are also school districts themselves. And I know at the association, we've gotten a lot of interest from school districts who have Indian students that might not necessarily be in the geographic areas where their tribes are, but they're providing JOM or want to provide JOM activities for those students. And I'm wondering how you would communicate to them as well.
Good questions, I'm thinking.
Do we need music? Dun 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 dun.
I would like see if my colleague from Raqqa, what are their thoughts on a Federal Register notice on?
Yes, this is Regina, and I was just thinking about other types of programs that are out there that have an announcement via the Federal Register indicating that the funds are available, and you know, here is where you would review the information at this webpage, etc. Because I know that the BIE does have a Federal Register notice put out when they have the the TED program, like tribal education. I don't recall what the D stood for, but something of that nature. And yeah, so that's probably a good idea. That way it's made available. Notice is made available to everyone. So that would be a good idea.
And that would be even prior to any funding changes?
Yes, and that would also comply with our information collection process, because then we would have that application, etc., as part of that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Steve, for those suggestions and questions. On the screen, I did change it. So if you have comments or questions after the webinar closes, you can send them to biecomments@bie.edu. We have a couple of deadlines, although, like I said earlier, the final report over the year's activities and information gathering will be at the end of the year. But for now, we have a deadline to submit comments that I believe matches the Federal Register notice of July 22nd. And then after the preliminary report is published, which we're aiming for the end of June, then there would be a 60-day comment period on the preliminary report once it is published. And then again, there is our BIE JOM webpage address in case you think of something after this call.
And this is Regina again. So once the preliminary report is published, it would be announced by a Federal Register notice.
Any further comments or suggestions?
Hello.
Yes.
This is Ava Ballard with Osage Nation again.
Yes.
I had a question regarding expanding our JOM contract. We have established an immersion school with approximately 50 students, and we want to include them with our JOM program. So do you have any thoughts on that, if that will be allowed?
Angela, do you have a response?
Well, right now, what I am taking is I have seen several tribes that have submitted information that is similar to what you're talking about, and I'm taking them. However, that will be brought up for discussion to see if what tribes can actually include. And, you know, one of the topics that has kind of, you know, we've talked about and, it is that, and then others. But we are currently talking about those kind of programs that are out there, those different kinds of schools, like virtual schools and things like that. So right now, I will take them. However, in the future, we'll just have to see how that all works out.
Okay, so we should send that. Okay.
Yeah. Are you okay? But one of the things I do ask is that, are you currently serving them? You know, is that something that you're serving, or is it something you're wanting to include? And for those camps that are coming in, those are types of services that they are currently serving.
Right.
So you might want to have a more in-depth offline conversation to get all the details.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. And Avis, you're one of the ones that I want to reach out to, so I'm glad you're on the line.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, this is Teresa Cisneros. I'm calling from Southern Oregon ESD, and I'm very, very new to this, and I have no idea what JOM is. So I'm wondering if there's a resource somewhere so that I can educate myself about it more. Is there guidelines to the types of programs you're most likely to fund? Yes.
Angela, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah. What you can do is you can go to 25 CFR Part 273, and it talks about the Johnson O'Malley. So if you go there and you take a look at that and you read that, and then if you have any other questions, feel free to either to email me or give me a call, or submit your comments.
Is that on the website?
Yeah, what you can do is you can just Google it. Yeah, it's on our BIE website. But if you Google it, it'll come up as well.
And it's 25,273?
25 CFR Part 273, yes.
Oh.
And it talks about education contracts under Johnson O'Malley. Also,
Okay.
another good resource that you can go to is the National JOM Association website. So if you Google National JOM Association, they have a lot of information on their website that is very helpful as well. Very helpful.
Okay.
Ms. Carla Mann,
great.
she's the president, and she always has that updated. And I always encourage everybody that you know, anything that we keep her, you know, when I receive something, I try to send something to her because they can get it on their website pretty quick.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I would also add, it's not really part of this webinar, but Angela and myself, this is Maureen, we're pretty new to our positions, and what we want to do in the upcoming year, and it's part of the BIE strategic plan, BIE strategic direction, is we would like to update our policies or any documents out there, any guidebooks that the Bureau had created previously, where we want to review those, consolidate, update, as well as look at how we can provide some training, not just technical assistance on the required reporting elements. That's also in the new Modernization Act, that the BIE provide TA on the reporting requirements, but really working with like the National Johnson O'Malley Association, any state departments out there, like the Oklahoma JOM Association. If you know of any out there, we would like to have a contact with them so we can join maybe State Department of Ed conferences and have presentations on JOM. So our goal is to do more outreach in this coming year. Any other comments, suggestions? Regina or Brenda, do you have any comments?
No, I do not.
I don't have any comments either, and I've been taking some notes here on some of the questions that were posed that we could follow up on.
Yeah, and one of the things that we will follow up on with Regina and her office is the immersion, what Avis was asking about. And so if immersion is already receiving some federal dollars, then we'll have to check into that and see if we're not able to use JOM funds for that. So we'll look into that.
I would encourage you to look at the proposed regulations that the BIE just posted on the BIE JOM website, the new documents posted to prepare for the discussion of the rulemaking sessions. any final comments before we sign off? And I apologize. I don't think I told you my name and title at the beginning. I'm Maureen Lesky, and I am the program manager for the Office of Sovereignty and Indian Education. I'm in the Albuquerque office, and my email address is maureen.lesky@bie.edu. Angela, who is our one Johnson O'Malley specialist within the Bureau, is angela.barnett with the number 1 at the end of Barnett, angela.barnett1@bie.edu. You'll also find her information on the BIE JOM website. Well, if there are no more comments, Regina, is it all right to end a little early?
Sure, it sure is. You may adjourn.
Okay, thanks a lot, everyone, and please send us your comments. We'll sign off. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.